And we're live.
All right, we are now live.
Sweet on the tube of you.
Yes, and you.
And you.
This is gonna be the replays. I was waiting for it to pop up and show. There it goes. There's a little bit of a delay.
Yeah, there's always that small delay. Yep, there we're on.
I am very pixelated. I don't know why.
Ooh, I can't listen to. I have to pause it.
Wait, I turned my volume off. I thought of that.
Yeah, you obviously thought further ahead than I did. Yeah, you are very pixelated on my screen.
I don't know. I look fine on my screen, and then when I actually watch the video, so I'm not really sure why that is. Um,
Maybe it could be StreamYard being weird because it booted me earlier.
Oh, yeah, it looks like it's showing I have an unstable connection. So, sorry, folks, we're having some technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Standing by.
I'm connected to my good internet. I don't know. I'm hoping it'll pick up.
All right.
I don't have an Ethernet cable handy. But hello and welcome.
Woo!
I don't think there's anybody here right now, but
That's fine.
if you're watching the replay, welcome. We are, of course, today discussing the first book of Crown of Stars, King's Dragon by Kate Elliott, and this beautiful cover.
Mine's
This is better than mine. It is. It's true. It's the bigger.
eBay.
I got mine on eBay too. I just got the book club versions accidentally because I just wanted them very quickly. But they're nice.
Looked. Other than being, I think these were like a little smoke stained. Because when I cleaned them off, they were a bit. But I think these are first editions.
Oh, nice.
They do say first printings, so
very cool. I'm gonna at some point. I'm definitely gonna have to upgrade and get the big hardcovers.
I love it.
But nice a couple shiny. Of mine are kind of iffy on how they are, and some of the dust jackets aren't that great. But they definitely, you could definitely tell they were used when I got them. But
yeah, whenever I see them whenever I see them in store, the dust jacket. Usually, I see the book club edition. Either the book club edition is deteriorating, or the paperback mass market paperback is in pristine condition. It's one or the other.
Some of these get way too big for the mass market paperbacks too, though. So I'm definitely not my mass market paperback type person. But, so, King's Dragon. For those of you that don't know, which is probably most people, even if you're watching this, because it's not super well known. So I have, since picking up King's Dragon and starting Crown of Stars, it's been my goal to get more people to read this series because I love it. I'm even still 3 books in out of the 7. I'm trying to slow down to let Andrew and others catch up so that we can talk about the books, because we were chatting before the show started and already there were so many things. He's like, I'm predicting this. And I'm like, I want to tell you, but I can't because I will not spoil it because there's definitely some twists and turns. But kind of the brief summary of King's Dragon. We're going to talk a ton about it, so this is going to be a very brief summary. But we have a very medieval world. We follow a couple of young main characters whose names we're probably even going to pronounce differently because we both, I think, made up pronunciations. But we have Lyeth, and she is, I heard you in your review pronounced it Lyeth, I think, or Lath.
You know what? I think your pronunciation might be right. I think it's Lyeth, yeah, Lyeth.
The full name is Lyethano, so it's
I switched to the A and the I. I just that just.
I honestly, I
read the entire book incorrectly.
Whatever my gut pronunciation is the very first time, that's what I stick with. I read The Eye of the World 3 times before I realized it's not Edmund's Field and it's Emmons Field. I'm not gonna lie.
Emmon.
I read it as Edmonds every time, reading this like 3 times through. So my brain reads things the way it wants to read things, I found. But my wife has joined the stream apparently.
She's gonna hurt me. I fear I fear for my life from your wife. But she's a wonderful woman.
This is already a great stream. 5 minutes in.
How do you pronounce Elaine? Do we pronounce that the same?
Yeah, Elaine. That's usually what I
Elaine.
say.
Well,
Which after reading this, I've seen in like 3 other books, so it's interesting.
really?
Hmm.
Do you pronounce it Rosvita? Rosvita?
Rosvita,
Or
kind of, yeah.
Rosvita? Yeah. There's no e in there. It's weird. In this book, some of the names are super simple, and the other ones are just out there. We've got Wolf here, Sabella, and then you've got King Henry out of nowhere. Just like this super vanilla name.
Yeah, I did. I think it's because I say Aegis, but I remember I watched an Alan video and he mentioned the correct pronunciation of that name, and I don't remember what it was now, but I say Aegis for the freighter.
Is it
Uh,
Aegeus?
it's I'm pretty sure it's not
Aegeus?
Aegis. It's something like different because I remember watching a video where he corrected it. It wasn't even related to this book. I'm not sure why, but I distinctly remember it happening.
By the end of the book, I think he was probably my favorite character.
His actions and his spirit lives on, so he's not forgotten.
It is rare within a 500-page book from you to take one character that I'm super dubious on, and then by the end of the book, I don't want to read anybody else. Put him back on the page. He was so cool. I mean, a bit fanatical, but super cool by the end.
Mm-hmm. That does come back into play too.
Does it?
Yeah. I have to be.
Is he going to become a saint?
I mean,
he should.
If he does, it's not where I'm at. I'll tell you that. That hasn't happened yet. But honestly, I could kind of see it. So I think that's a good prediction. But there's a lot of book left. I'm still like not even quite halfway because I'm counting middle of 4 to be the halfway point. So, but anyway, so after that couple minute long aside, so we have this really medieval world, and it's the kingdoms of Wendar and Vari, and we do have King Henry. We're on the brink of civil war with his sister Sabella, who thinks that she should have actually been the one to inherit, not him. There are some complicated ways and reasons why certain people inherit different ways, but religion plays a very big role in this. It's kind of pseudo-Catholic with some lots of other things kind of put in there, and that's definitely something I want to get into because there's a lot of interesting things, and I know, Andrew, that you have lots of thoughts about that too. Some good, some not, but there is definitely a lot to talk there. And then the young characters, we have Lyeth, who after her father dies, she's sold off basically as a slave, and then has to go through and try and figure out, and she's desperately trying to protect the Book of Secrets, which has some big implications later on, and something that her father had as a mathematician. Is that how you pronounce it, by the way?
Yeah, I didn't. There's too many I's in that word, so mathematician sounds just fine.
Mathematician, which is basically this is a pretty low magic fantasy world, so it involves like astronomy and math, and there is some magic involved as well too. But we start, especially in book 1, very low magic, and then kind of everything continues to be expanded upon. But so she's kind of going through her path there as the brief intro, and then we have Elaine, who is visited by.
Oh, hold on. I think we lost Nico for a second. Nico, are you there? Shoot Nico a message. See if he's coming back online. Direct message, Nico. You froze. See if we can get him back. But yeah, like as Nico was saying, we have Elaine. Elaine is a young man who is visited by the Lady of Battles. And during this battle, basically, he has been promised to the church by his adopted family. And on his way to that church, Elaine essentially, his town is ransacked, and he begs the Lady of Battles to intervene. Upon this point, Elaine can't be promised to the church. He is promised to the church, but he has no church to go to in which to study, and so basically, he goes into the service of the Count to work a year and a day because he wants to visit and explore the world before he enters into the priesthood. And from that point is kind of where our story goes. Let's see if we've got any word from Nico. Okay, it looks like his internet just went out. So we are experiencing some technical difficulties. Oh, there he is! And he froze again. With that beautiful face. Oh my gosh. Oh, I shouldn't be laughing, but that is amazing. But as Nico was saying, are you back?
How about now?
You are back now.
Okay.
Oh, no, you're not back now. You were back. Oh, no.
Okay.
I'm waiting a couple seconds before we.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not really sure what's happening. I haven't had any internet issues, but it does not seem to be working super well right now.
I kind of explained Elaine's role into the live stream. I just kind of kept talking.
Hey, yeah, that works. So I'm hoping this won't happen again.
If it does, I'll just do a little dance on camera.
That works.
It works for Jacksepticeye. Why won't it work for me?
It looks. I don't know. It looks like it's working okay right now. So hopefully it will continue. Yeah, so that's kind of as Andrew finished the kind of the brief introduction into what's going on. We do get a big cast of characters that continue on as we get further in, but let's go ahead and just jump into any discussion topics. So what's your kind of your first reactions after finishing the biggest things that stand out to you? Start there.
The biggest things that stand out to me is I kind of want to get more into the non-human races. There is the battle with the humans that took place 10, 15 years prior.
Mm.
And then you've got the constant invasions by these lizard-like men called the Ika?
I say Ika. I'm not sure if that's right either, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Ika. So exploring them, and then there is something I know we're going to explore it because there are certain parts of the book, but I'll save that until we get to spoiler section, just so I don't want to spoil anything. But I have a feeling that going forward, we are definitely going to see more of the Ika in their roles, especially what was his name? Bloodheart, I believe his name is the king. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. He's the kind of the king of the Ika, and I don't. It's kind of they have a weird system of differentiating, but he's the leader, like the king, essentially.
Okay, so I also want to know. I also want to discuss the Saints, like I mentioned backstage, before we went live. I think the Saints are super interesting because I think the definition of what a saint is kind of turned on its head a little bit. And it's just such an interesting series. There are certain characters that I would love to see harm come to.
Yeah, I bet.
And then there are certain
Who do you mean?
I don't know who I might mean. Who could it be other than Hugh?
Yes. Well, we'll talk about Hugh, I'm sure, too. But
there are this book is honestly for the start of a series. I've never had something quite pull me in and frustrate me so much. Well, This edition is only, I think, 530 pages. And in my review of this, I swear I had read 700 to 800 pages.
It felt like it. It really did. That's why I couldn't believe how quickly you read this, because it's not a horribly long book, but it is very slow and deliberate in the pacing.
Yeah.
And even in just the first book, the amount of world building that is there's so much. And it continues to get expanded on, but this is definitely a book I think, yeah, reading a little bit slower is good, so that
And
you
I did
don't completely
advise.
get through. I saw in your review.
I was just like, hey, add a couple days on it. Take your time with it. The world building is, I would put the world building up there with Wheel of Time, with Realm of the Elderlings. Now, I've only read 4, almost 4. I'm on page 700. I'll count it as read, whatever. Any other book, and I'd be done.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's so impressive with the world building too, is this is the first book, and you can say something like that and have it be reasonable, that putting the world building on that kind of a scale. And I think in my review, I commented originally that I don't think I've ever seen this much world building done this well in a first book.
Right.
There's still a lot of time, and when you look at other big series like Wheel of Time, for example, where it gets built up huge later, but a lot of the world building was done in kind of the middle books, versus this already starts off so much, and it's really a branching off point. Since you mentioned the non-human or the other races, we do get a lot more Ica in book 2, I'll tell you, which is not a spoiler. We learn a lot more about them, and in book 3 we learn a lot more about the Kuman as well. It's kind of each.
Do they have wings?
They, from the point of view, they do have wings.
Okay,
but you'll find out more about it.
Yeah, I remember reading a description, and I just kind of glossed over it, and then it just kind of poked up in the back of my mind of, wait a minute, are they winged beings?
It's they're very interesting to learn more about them, because it's just not a ton is really known, and that's each book here, because the amount of world building here, and I'll hype you up a little bit and hype up the viewers. You get this really cool built world, and in each of the next consecutive books, we go into regions that we've never been. We see more stuff, learn more about the world, see more people, more kingdoms, more of the different non-human or other type of people. So it really, really does build up in each of the first 3 books at this point for me. So really, really fascinating seeing that. That was something I really enjoyed, is we already had such a nice world, and they're like, yeah, you needed that in book 1, because now I'm moving on to more stuff, and it's getting even bigger. And it's just like, man, she knew what she was doing with that world building, for sure.
I did have a question. Do you think the mathematicians are inspiration for the mathematicians in Broken Empire?
I kind of wondered if that was just a pun from Mark Lawrence, or if that was related. So I would be really curious. There have been a couple of things that have been in these books. So I'm like, I wonder if that had something. So it's always interesting reading if it's just similarities, if it was inspiration. And I mean, these aren't the most well-known books, so Mark Lawrence may have never even heard of them, or maybe it was a nod. But it'd be really cool if it was. So
yeah, that'd be really cool. The humanity that you get across in some of these books, in this book particularly, is, I had to put the book down at certain points. Like I was genuinely moved and or horrified. I've never. Usually I can push past it. Like Grimdark. I mean, first law, chopping off bits of finger doesn't bug me. Holding somebody's feet to the coals doesn't bug me. I mean, in Star Wars, it made me giggle, but it was a robot. But anyway, and this book, at least for I want to say late so bad, because that's how I read the entire book.
It's okay. You can say it. It's fine.
No, I've got to get it right. I got to come correct, as Alan would say. And Elaine, from a character development standpoint, like Elaine doesn't want to join the monastery. It's not the life that he envisions. He wants to go out with his adopted father and go sailing. He wants to see the world at least for once. That's all he's asking. Give me one chance. And then he gets his one chance. And it's very much be careful what you wish for.
Mm-hmm.
Now, don't get me wrong. I think it ends up very well for him. But getting there is a rough journey.
Yeah, there is more to the story too. It's so just to touch on because I have several responses to that, but since you brought it up that way, because that was something I really enjoyed about this book, and I know you mentioned as well, yeah, in your review and when we were talking about this, is the way it takes something that seems like a familiar trope or it seems like you know what's going to happen, and kind of it's turned on its head a little bit, or it's taken in a unique direction. Because we see that with Elaine. He's the, boy of mysterious parentage who finds out, who his real family is and goes off and gets the life of his dreams. But it's not that simple at all. And it doesn't really go that way. And we see it with Lyeth too, where she is kind of seeming like she's the damsel in distress who's, going through all these things, and that she's gonna be like, the kind of victim you see in a lot of books too. And it's no, not at all, because she, like I think you commented, she is a badass and a very, very strong
overcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And really, she perseveres and overcomes despite everything. And even if she falters, she always catches herself right before she falls. But she is traumatized by it. And the book makes sure to constantly remind you. Like a lot of books, when a trauma happens, it's a 1 to 2 chapter, and then it might be brought up later in the book or later in the series. But her trauma is every chapter. It makes you, from when you're in her head, it hasn't left her. It hasn't been forgotten. Nor should it. What happens is absolutely monstrous.
Definitely. And that does continue as well. It's not one of those things where it's just like this is her only defining part of her character, because it's absolutely not. But without spoilers, because it is very traumatic what happened, and if it happens to a person, like that's not something that you're just going to forget or get over. It becomes an important part of who she develops as a character. And does remain relevant as well. And so it was a horrifying thing, and it was definitely not what I expected to happen at that point in time either. But it's Kate Elliott does this is in no means what I say that is this grimdark, but it's very bleak at times, and there's definitely a melancholy feel to it as well. So you definitely get some of that darkness here with those things. But yeah, she is such a great character. And I liked Elaine too, and he kind of starts to take a back seat to Lyeth.
At least in the first book.
And then in the narrative, he does just a little bit as well. We focus a little bit more on Lyeth, and I think it makes sense because she's a very strong character. He has some good parts too, but part of it as well is as we get more people introduced, we focus on as well.
Well, when you speak of, I believe I mentioned this to you, where I actually taught you a feature of a Kindle. Sometimes you need a thesaurus in order to read this. And that's where my Kindle came in super handy, because she uses a lot of Old English, and you need to look up the word if you're going to understand what that sentence means, unless you're willing to read 3 paragraphs to then get the context of what was said, and then that paragraph back then now makes sense. Or if you've got the ebook version on a Kindle, you just press and hold the word, and it gives you that definition on the spot. Then you know the word and you can move on. And one of the benefits of it is, I don't know what the deal is right now, but on the Amazon store, almost all of them are like $4.99 and below for Crown of Stars. Nice. So
that's definitely a good thing to mention.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm very well read. I'm not even touting my own horn. I've been reading for 25 years, pretty much nonstop. And my old English is just atrocious or rusty.
Yeah. This was definitely a book like that for me as well. The last book I read where I actually am like, I don't know what that word means on a somewhat regular basis was Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever, which is Donaldson, and which was like in the 80s, and his prose. And yeah, Kate Elliott definitely uses some of it's the prose. She does use some complex things. Some of it is this takes place in kind of an old Englishy style world. So some of them are like, it's just words that aren't really used. I remember because the example you used were when it talked about vespers and nuns, or nons, but like the different times of the day, which was like you had like, your morning, your noon, and your night, when like in the monastery, like they sing the song of that time, and their hymns, and it's just, those are not words you're going to normally come across most likely in your everyday life. And so it was really helpful. I'm like, that would have been so cool to have on a few books. So it's a good thing to know.
Yeah, it made because I kind of hybrid read it. During the day I'd be reading my physical book, and at night I could read on the Kindle with the backlight. But then if I came across words that I didn't understand, my Kindle would tell me what that meant. So, and I, helped you pick out your Kindle, so I'm super proud of that.
It's true. I've started using mine a little bit more, so I'll have to definitely look into possibly doing some hybrid ones like that, because I like the idea of that. It's a lot easier to carry the Kindle, too. Like this is easier to carry than this. So
yeah, and the slipcover won't fray.
I gotta get one. Yeah, I haven't. There's no cover.
You'll be all right.
I'm clumsy. I won't be. But anyway, we just lost a viewer. We're down to one.
Oh, did we? Did we have viewers?
There were a couple of people here. It's like I wonder if maybe I shouldn't have put spoiler in the name. I wonder if I can change that during.
Layla Love, that Nico guy is handsome. I'm assuming that is your wife.
That was my wife.
I mean, she's not wrong.
I mean, that's debatable, but
aw, you're all I talk about, Nico.
You're just not seeing the live chat.
Yeah.
I've said it before on camera too. It's like me and you, we talk more than anybody I know. My wife always complains I talk to you more than I talk to her. So
you know what? Sometimes I don't think my wife doesn't really complain, because my wife loves her personal space.
That works.
If she wants me to spend time, she'll come get me.
Yeah, mine probably appreciates me not trying to talk to her about books that she doesn't care about. So
let's set up a group call. We'll talk about books all day long.
Let's do it.
Do it. Books.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, do you want to move on to kind of a spoiler section?
If you want to do, I just took spoilers out of the description, and now I'm gonna put it back. I'm putting it back. We can. So really quick before we do spoilers,
okay?
Because I had a few other talking points. I just wanted to.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely.
And I was tempted to do spoilers too, but so a couple of the big things, and we've talked about the religion part a little bit, but for me, one of the most interesting pieces, there are two of the really big pieces which we've touched on with the Saints, but one of the really big interesting ones was the gender roles, because of the fact that in this time, their god is the union of both a male and a female, basically. So it's both like male and female versus just a male god, which you saw in like similar religions, like, with Christianity and Catholicism, it's always looked as the one male presence. So gender roles being very, very different based on that. And I know you had told me before when you read that there was even one character going on a rant about how men should never be allowed to inherit, because you can't even trust, their line at all. You can only trust the woman's line. And it's just, yep. Antonia. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, her talking about that, like only women should be allowed to inherit, and it's just so interesting and such a different look than what you would see in a lot of medieval fantasy because of that one difference in the religion. So kind of wanted to just, what are your opinion? What are your thoughts on that? On the kind of the different gender roles based on that religion and how they affect the characters.
Well, one of the things, because my grandmother was Jewish, and so I've got a little bit of an insight into that, and that's actually a very Jewish mindset, as far as I'm aware. Is usually it is passed down through the mother's line. So there is basis for it. But I mean, I looked at this as a very Christian-based religion. And I don't really want to touch too much on real life religion, because that can get into a slippery slope, and I don't want to get into too much trouble. But the switching of the gender roles it was super interesting, because when she gives that rant, she gives it with such fervor that I can see and understand where she's coming from, because I mean, obviously, yes, if a child comes from a mother's womb, then that child is obviously hers. No, it's not. You can't just shove a baby up there and pop it out later. It's not how it works. Trust me, I just had a kid. It's not how that works.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
And so, while I can understand where it's coming from, the fact that it was not only incredibly sexist, but it was almost like I'm going to take my narrative and force it into this line of thinking, even though this issue has already been settled. And it was super interesting, because the fervor reminded me of Nazi fervor, where I mean, it was very, very just, she was preaching to nobody. Nobody was really listening to her at that point, if I remember in the story. But she was talking, and she was passionate. She was only talking to one person, and she like wide-eyed, like lost her mind, just screaming from the mountaintops. And sure. I don't know. I've gone off on a ramble, but I don't understand Antonia as a character. I don't understand how she was allowed to do what she did. I understand that they do have the separation of church and state. But if I had been King Henry, I wouldn't. The punishment she receives didn't fit the crime.
Yeah, and that's because of the relation, basically,
between the church and the state.
Well, just between it's a lot of the big people. They're either from royal houses or they're somewhat interrelated, and so that's why they got kind of lighter sentences, and that was the big thing. I mean, the church is very, very powerful in the world, and so basically, because of the fact that she's a part of the church, it's kind of like that's the church's jurisdiction, and so that's kind of how it's looked at. So she's sent to basically be judged by the Scopos, which is kind of like the Pope, it sounds like, and then kind of go from there. So more definitely more happens there too, but we can't talk about that because you haven't gotten there yet. But
it's weird, because she was so confident she was going to get away with it.
And
if it's a trope subversion, I want to see her not get away with it and then be surprised by
it. Things don't necessarily go the way she planned in this book, and I can't really speak to what happens, but we find out more about kind of what her goals are and what's going on. But it is interesting, and I think part of it is this book starts out kind of low magic, and then we expand on what's there as well. So you get the feeling to me at least, that she kind of was muddling with things she didn't fully understand. And most of the uses of any form of magic in this book are mostly people who don't really know what they're doing, because of the fact that it's just not something that's prevalent. So those are topics that whenever we do the next debrief, when you read the next book, I think there'll be a lot more to chat about there. So,
all right, well, you've convinced me. Fine, I'm going to go read Prince of Dogs.
No, read it. Well, okay. Now, We'll end. That's all right. We're gonna read Prince of Dogs. But so the other thing, kind of just with the religion and sort of not with the religion at the same time, being the saints, who are looked at as like, when you hear, oh, they're the saints, you think of it like, in the world where like real people after they die usually are considered saints, but we see some of the fact that some of these saints are not only like real, but they're somewhat like beings of power.
Yeah.
And can get involved. And so that I thought was really interesting, just because it shows us like, okay, so how much of this religion is true, how much isn't? And that was something
I
that
never
just
even
interested
thought of
me.
that. That never even crossed my mind.
Oh, really?
No, because
I must have dug in more to the religious side.
Well, no, because typically when I'm reading a fantasy book, I just take it on faith. I take it on faith that the religion is usually correct.
I suppose I've always I think it's interesting looking at different views, but so that's something, just so you know, you're absolutely supposed to question the religion in this book.
Are you?
There are actually some, and this isn't really a spoiler, it's just telling you later there are more plot lines. And it starts with Aegis as well, who he's
Right.
Frater Aegis, and he's a Frater, so he's a member of the church, and
He's
a character at one point,
monk,
priest basically, or monk,
priest,
or
yeah.
and he's a character who a large part of him is he believes strongly in something that goes against the teachings of the church and is considered heresy. It basically, so without getting into like full on religion, it's kind of like the religion says that the blessed Dyson, not the vacuum, it's spelled differently, but the blessed Dyson ascended to the chamber of light, which is like heaven, and happened. And there's this other narrative that starts to creep up that no, he was actually basically like flayed alive, and then
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And then afterwards ascended, and so that's considered heresy. And so that differing narrative, which kind of branches off, and there are definitely parallels to real world religion there, but that kind of different narrative stretching off to the fact that we know that to at least some extent some of these saints are real beings of power. It just it sets up a really interesting question of religion. And I know the religious parts were your least favorite part, and I get it, because they do just straight up read scripture sometimes. The thing is, it gets a little dry, but it's interesting because usually you'd have a book like that and you think like this is just filler, or like, even like you go to the Lord of the Rings and it's like a full page of the elf song, and I'm like, I don't want to read this. And so like I get it, but it's actually
I
so
always
much
go
of
to
it is
YouTube and
super
listen to
relevant.
somebody singing that song to me.
That's a really good idea. I always read the songs, and I always hate myself for reading the songs. So, I'm getting off topic again, but
no, it's completely worth it. Go on YouTube. Somebody has sang it. They've done a beautiful job.
I will for sure do that.
It helps it come more alive.
I like it. But anyway, yeah, it's the scripture passages, or sometimes they like read from a history, which to some extent I imagine like that's what they did for entertainment. There's times they're just like at a banquet and they're like, read us from the history, tell us a story. And so that's what they do. But most of it is at least somewhat very relevant in an interesting way. So it's used, it's not quite just info dumping, but it's used as an in-world way to impart knowledge to both the reader and the people hearing it. So that was definitely something else. I thought that was interesting with kind of the gender roles.
And now we need to talk about the puppies.
The puppy.
The puppies.
All right, let's talk about the puppies.
How did you feel about the puppies? I'm just going to keep calling them the puppies, by the way.
The puppies. So we do have some hounds, and they're like very large and vicious hounds.
They're basically like black death dogs from Harry Potter.
Or like well, see, what it made me think of was the Hounds of Shadow and or Darkness from Malazan.
Okay, yeah.
They're not actually like mystical. They're regular hounds for the most part, but that was an interesting plot device too that plays in, because they basically are specifically loyal to a certain person, and it's a bloodline really, which man, I can't talk about that either. I keep thinking of things I want to talk about that happen later that are super interesting. But they play a big part, and like it's another thing where it's just kind of introduced like, oh yeah, we have the Count of Lavas, Count Lavestein, and
that's
Yeah, Lavestein.
Is
it a spoiler, you think, to mention what happens to Elaine?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay,
It's not a huge spoiler. Yeah, the songs are amazing.
I just saw somebody liked the song comment. So, James, have you read the book?
Is he still here?
I'm not. I show a thing. Yeah, okay, and actually, I might be the live viewer. I looked on my phone earlier. I must not have closed it. But I don't know.
It might be me, but I've got it paused.
I'm gonna close out. Okay, after I opened it up to try to close out of it, it shows 2 now. So, oh yeah, it doesn't tell me who they are. But that was it. That was at 6:38. He might be here. I'm gonna type. There's a little bit of. Okay, he just said no. He has not read the book. Well, we were about to talk spoilers, James.
Well, hey, we detoured. We can always come back to those topics later. What about the role of magic within the church? We can definitely talk about the role of magic within the church without really getting into spoilers.
Yeah, that works.
Well, it's weird because the way I initially started in on the magic in this series was I thought it was something that was like heretical, only like pagans basically did this. And then you come to find out that that's not the case. But at the same time, like there are magic users within the church, but then like it's kind of a hush hush under the table. Like, yeah, we do magic. We just only do certain kinds of magic. And it's just like, only certain kinds of magic. So I'm curious to see what kind of magic systems are within the world, because it definitely seems that there are multiple disciplines and multiple branches of magic that can be explored, because there's also the race of the others, I believe is what they're called, or the lost ones. Is that what they're called? The lost ones.
You do have kind of both, but yeah. So the lost ones are the Aoi, which sound like elves to me. It's not made super clear in the first book, but that's how I pictured them. But yeah, a lost race that were known to be more magical directly.
Right, and so I don't think that they use the same type of magic that Laeth is her father used. And it's weird because when we first meet them, you mentioned the book of is it the Book of Secrets?
The Book of Secrets.
Book of Secrets,
which is not a very cool name for it, but
no, I almost called it the Book of Shadows. The Book of Secrets is hidden. It's a secret. Don't tell anybody about. Obviously, it's a secret. It's named the Book of Secrets. But she spends most of this book keeping this book hidden, and we really still don't know why by the end of the book, why it was kept hidden, why this book was so important. Mainly because it's written in multiple languages that only certain people are educated to read, or it's just the language has fallen out of fashion. I got the impression that people in the church could read the book because that language was taught within the church.
So there are a couple of different languages. There's kind of the common tongue. There's Darien, which I'm almost certainly pronouncing wrong. It's like Dariyan.
Darium is how I pronounced it.
That was one. I'm like, I don't know, and I said Darien, and that's how I pronounced it for the rest of the time. So
Darien.
Probably wrong. Because it sounds dumb when you say it like that. It doesn't sound like a cool language. But
that's some guy I knew in high school.
Hey, Darien, we named a language after you. But so you have that. Darien is kind of the old like religion. So that would be like Latin for us.
Okay.
So like the old kind of religious language that nobody really speaks anymore, but in the church it's still practiced. And then there's another language which is Jinna. Jinna, I believe, is in the Far East, not on the map that we have access to at this time. And they're looked at as kind of like savages. Yeah, I have to look because there's not a great map in the first 3 books, and Brian Lee Durfee commented that in one of the later books you get like a much more detailed map, and so he actually cut it out and taped it because like that shows a fair amount, but we go south of that in book south in book 2 and east in book 3.
Really?
And north somewhat too. So like we expand out in the world a lot more, and we just don't have it in the map. So that's definitely something I wonder if I can find.
You know, I just noticed this little skull and sword down in the corner.
Oh yeah, is that on mine? I gotta look now. It doesn't look familiar.
That looks cool.
Oh no, it is absolutely on mine. So mine. I was just wrong.
That was a nice little touch.
See, now I'm wondering if there's like a big. I'm gonna Crown of Stars map.
Ooh, you're gonna try and pull it up on the screen?
Yeah, if I can find one, I'll plug my. Holy cow! Is that?
Is it big?
No. Well, when you Google and it shows you like a really big map, and then I look and I'm like, that's not at all what I typed in. That's really hard to see. So anyway, while I'm pulling this up, sorry, but you do get a lot better looks. Oh, this is. Yeah, let me pull this up. This is actually a lot better. You do get to explore really a whole heck of a lot more on the map,
as the
which I
series
enjoy.
goes on.
But it's really the different languages, the different areas, and the map is actually a heck of a lot bigger. When you see it like this is really interesting. So yeah, let me get the other screen pulled up. I'm gonna check out a couple of other ones. And this is another really cool map. I don't know why I waited until a live stream to
fully look up a map.
Yeah, that was not smart.
Drop that in the Discord.
Yeah, I will. We have a map channel in our Discord, and I will definitely job it up. So I'm wondering how far we get away, because I just found a completely other different map that's very impressive. So let's.
I'm waiting on you.
Apparently, the world is called Navaria.
That sounds correct. That I feel like they told us that.
Probably. There's a ton of places I am not familiar with, so I don't think this is gonna be anything spoilers, but these are apparently places we're gonna go that we have not been yet.
Oof, I am prepared. No, I'm not.
Do you think that's gonna be a spoiler?
Yeah, go ahead and do it.
Pull
the trigger.
Boom. It's too late. Okay, let's pop up on the screen here. We'll take a look at a map.
Oh wow.
So the area where we spend time is Wendar and Vari here, and I think this might be upside down almost.
Because I think it's sideways, not upside down. Because
Salia's in the southeast of the map, I think. It is sideways.
Yeah.
Can I turn it?
I don't know. Can you turn it?
It doesn't. I don't think so.
That's fine.
So we're looking at a sideways map, but we spent time like here, and
you've got the there we go.
So like over in here, and then when you
I've heard of the marshlands. That's where the battle supposedly happened. Yep. With the Cumans. Correct.
And then like look how far this goes. There's Arathausa. Arathausan's another language it's mentioned, and Jinna's all the way down here in the south.
Oh, okay.
So nowhere.
There's another skull. And a crow.
You gotta have a skull.
Yeah.
His name is Gilbert.
Is it? Oh, it is Gilbert.
I'm assuming that he's the guy who drew this map. But
he drew it sideways. I'm disappointed in him.
See, Alba always makes me think the Isle of Elba off France, but yeah, I'm not sure why it's done this way. Maybe the map.
And here's Ecoland. That I feel like that could have been named a little better, but
well, I'm guessing it's more so because it doesn't really have a name, but that's just where they are.
Oh, that would make sense.
Is kind of what I'm thinking. But yeah, so looking at that and comparing to, which I know I'm kind of small on the screen, but that's our normal map. There's a lot more detail. So the other one, because I did pull up 2, this one actually starts with Jinnah and Arathaza and doesn't. This doesn't include at all the worlds that we've seen, and it goes even further down a little bit. So these are completely new areas.
It says
this
the
is
world after the cataclysm is what it says. So I wonder, that could be a spoiler.
No, it's not. So the cataclysm happened like 1,000. Oh, Alba is in Scotland. Maps. Patrick is here. Okay, hold
Patrick,
on.
you said you couldn't make it.
I just saw the comments. So let me get back. Let me get back to the comments here. I can't find my mouse. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we have basically Europe. Yeah, a lot of it does look kind of like that, and it feels kind of like medieval Europe, Old English. So maps. North and Baltic seas are huge, though. Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
I've never been.
I think he's saying like they're too big on this map. Alba's name is Scotland, and Albion is named for Great Britain. Interesting.
I didn't know this.
I also did not. And Patrick said he's late, but he did just get here. So,
well, we're happy to have you.
It's what are the odds you come during map time? This was not.
I know it was destined to be.
I Googled for these maps while live on the internet. So, but yeah. So the cataclysm though that happened like thousands of years ago in the current time. It's referenced. I don't think it's referenced a ton in book 1, but that is not a spoiler. So I don't want you to think there's going to be some big cataclysm.
No, I do remember mention of a cataclysm. I just don't remember the time frame for when it happened, for when that occurred. But you know the one character we haven't mentioned.
Which one?
Sanglant.
Songlant.
Songlant, whatever.
Songlant.
Sanglant.
It literally so and I'm not throwing shade because the only other person I'm aware of on the internet that's talking about these books is Brian Lee Durfee, and he's posted reviews for like the first 3. I jokingly told him to not do one for 4 or I'd have to read it sooner, and he hasn't done one for 4, so I don't know if he took me seriously because I'm not caught up. But he's talked a lot about these, and he said Sanglant too, and I'm like, every time it says his name in the book, it specifies they pronounced it Songlant. It's like it's specified so many times, Songlant. It's like Kate Elliott is like, I don't care if you pronounce everybody else's name wrong, you're gonna pronounce Songlant. Correct.
Yeah, and it's such a weird name. Sanglant is just easier to say.
But yeah, he is kind of an important character to talk about, though. So that's a good point.
He is the first son of King Henry, who was done. It was the king's promise, is what the rite of passage to become the ruler is, correct? Which I still don't understand. I'm still not okay with it, and frankly, it still sounds gross. Until you convince me that it's not.
We probably should talk about the king's progress too, but so what he's talking about. What he's talking about, and so maybe you guys who are in the chat, if you've heard of this, I tried to like do some digging and I didn't find a lot. I meant to ask Alan about it. I figure he might have heard of it, but the idea is, in order to prove that you are worthy of being heir, you have to basically go out, and if you're a male, get someone pregnant, and if you're female, get pregnant to prove that you are fertile, and like the baby has to be born, and that's like you have to go on your progress. And do that, the king's progress, or it could be queen's progress. Like that sounds is a legitimate thing.
Weird.
That's actually the opening of the book is like 20 years before the main story, and it's Henry. Before he was king, he had to go out and get somebody pregnant, and for some reason, he got one of the Aoi, the lost ones, who are like I said, I'm thinking of them as elves. Did you think of them as elves, or is that just me?
Yeah, they're kind of elf-like.
Okay, I was wondering, like maybe I'm crazy, but
No.
because they're never once called elves. That's just kind of what I equated them to. Another one of the non-human races, but so he ends
They're
up
mostly
impregnating.
human.
Well, kind of, but they're
In
a little
appearance.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So twisting armed by the yes, Patrick, by the series. Um,
Listen, it was recommended. He's like, buy the first book. I went on eBay. I bought all 7.
I read the first book and then immediately bought the next 6. So
Nope. I took your recommendation, so if I don't like the rest of the series, it is entirely your fault.
Hey, I mean, I even worst case, if you don't, like, I'll buy your nice hardcovers off you, and then I'll do a giveaway from my my crappy ones that I own. So, like, it'll be okay. It'll work out. But yeah, so I mean, that's the progress though. So he went out and he got someone pregnant, and then that child, so the bastard child, is Songlant.
Yeah, and I
he's
find that
like half AOA.
I find that so weird because if that is part of the requirement to become a ruler, it is debated so often that you cannot have a bastard child in line for the throne.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they say, go forth and sleep with your people. And,
Yeah, it is kind of odd.
and
I'm
then,
wondering.
like, yeah, I don't know. Go ahead. I've got nothing nice to say about it.
I'm wondering if maybe it was some like obscure tradition that exists in the real world, because some heir to the throne one time, this prince is like, I want to go out and get laid. Let's make this a tradition that I have to, and then it'll be okay. I mean,
I want to go out and bang a peasant.
Yeah, it's like it's important, so I'm fertile and will bear an heir. Because I mean, I have heard
But
that
then they can't
having
be
an
an
heir is
heir.
really important. Well, and that's like normally you see that it's very important that they have an heir, and there's been the different stories.
And like if they were married, and then they like take their spouse with them and go amongst the people and do that I would understand. But by the end, Henry's daughter is going on her progress, and she's 16, right? Like 16-ish.
Pretty young. I think maybe slightly older, because I feel like
16, 17 maybe.
and it's Theopanu is the one, and I still can't remember the other daughter's name.
It's super hard to pronounce.
I feel like Theopanu is the hard one.
Oh, don't make me look this up.
There's the genealogy. Is it on the genealogy? The book opens, by the way. I actually don't think we mentioned with a genealogy of the recent rulers of Vari and Wendar. So Henry.
Henry. King of Wendar. Eobard. 5 siblings. Nope, they're not in here.
Well, Theopanu and the other one. It's because it's the other one that goes on the progress. That's why it's annoying.
Yeah, she's the fiery one.
Yeah.
That goes on the progress, and they're not in here a whole god awful lot. Actually, the best, and it's not Antonia. Hold on, it's at the end of the book. Oh,
you're looking. It's not Battle. Okay. Oh, hold on. I'll put. Have you? Oh, a different book. So Patrick asked in the meantime, have we read Le Morte de Arthur? And said, all the book is battle, lovemaking, battle, repeat. So the question, Patrick, is does he have to go love make in order to prove that he is fertile before becoming gay? Because then that would match what we're talking about here. But it is interesting, just kind of the way that it happens. But yeah, it's really, we're trying to remember the name. I'm gonna Google it really quick. Why not? So Crown, guys, this is a very professional live stream.
Who cares? We're having fun.
No, I know. I'm more joking.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I'm right there. Your Majesty, Wolf here. Theopanu.
I said that one. It's the other one. Who's the other one?
Sapientia.
Sapientia. Yeah, that's right. Holy crap. This is super interesting. I just looked at the Wikipedia page.
Why would you do that?
I was looking. In retrospect, it was not good, but actually, this is not a spoiler, but it's really cool. It's the historical parallels.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making sure that it's not. So it does say Alba is Britain. So you absolutely called it with that one. Just for the record, Hemvar, I think that was you. The professionalism makes it fun.
We're just sitting here talking about and rambling about a book.
So he said Alba.
We're an hour and we still haven't touched spoilers.
Okay. That's oh shoot, yeah, that's a good point. So anyway, but yeah, so it says Alba, Britain, Salia, France, Vari being the Low Countries, Wendar, Germany, Northmark, Denmark, Ica land is Norway and Sweden, which makes sense with the fjords. You got Poland, Slavs, Austria, Hungary, Switzerland, Rome, which Dari being Rome makes sense because that's where like the Skopos is. Erythrausa is like the Byzantium. The Kuman are like the Tartars or the Golden Horde. Apparently, there's Hesse merchants are mentioned or Jewish traders. There's something that correlates to the Aztecs, to Persia, Iberia, Carthage. So there's a ton, and I don't think we've actually necessarily mentioned, but I thought I was sharing the screen. Geez.
It's fine. I believed you.
I didn't make it up. I promise.
Liar.
There it is. Here's everything I just read. But there's a lot of historical parallels apparently here. So I thought that was interesting because the other thing too is the fact that Kate Elliott did do a ton of research.
Yeah, she did.
And actually specifically used like actual historical manuscripts to base a lot of the world building. So there is so much of it that does have that familiar feel while also being very different because of the fact that so much of it's research. And that really plays into the world building, I think, too, because of the fact that that's what you have.
Yeah,
so
I'm just not a fan of go forth and bang.
So with that, it has been an hour. So I've officially updated the description saying there's spoilers after the first hour because you make a really good point. We've been talking for an hour and have not talked spoilers. Let's talk some spoilers. So from this point on, I'm going to put it in the chat too, just in case anybody else pops in. Spoilers from this point on. So hopefully everyone will be aware. I don't think it's sent. It's loading. I don't know. It's probably my internet again. I legitimately thought you froze. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm good.
I hate you. It wouldn't let me send the message, and then I see you doing freeze faces. Criminy. From this point on, chat. We'll see if it goes through this time. I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But yeah, we're an hour in. If you've watched this far, you're probably okay with spoilers. But so what's you sounded like you had some things in mind. So what's your
Well, so I mentioned when you were having your internet dropped out, I went and covered the fact that the monastery that Elaine was promised to was sacked by, I believe that was that Ika or Kuman?
It was the Ika.
The Ika. And only through I mentioned that through the intervention of the Lady of Battles, but basically the Lady of Battles is a saint who basically says, "Ask me to intervene, and I will." And then she gives him a favor, which is a red rose that never wilts. It never wilts, and it never loses its thorns. And he basically wears it around his chest as a token of the Lady of Battles, and then she proceeds to drive the Ika away. And this is the kind of first hint that we get that the saints, there are actually two saints in this book who will make an appearance. I don't remember. It was she was the saint. She was a martyred saint, basically. She was murdered, and but anyway, the saints can interfere in the world. So I'm curious, going forward through the series, if we will see more saints popping up and more saints either meddling or interfering, or if we're just going to see returning saints. Because the city of, what was the city that fell during the siege? We're in full spoilers. I'm willing to talk about it.
Ghent, then.
Ghent.
Yeah.
They had a saint for their city, and literally they were down by her tomb, and they saw her appear, and she just created an escape tunnel because she knew the city was going to fall. And then once everybody who was going to escape had escaped, tunnel vanished.
I do think it's like it exists, but only like she can open it or something.
Well, it does mention that basically as they're going through it, it is wet earth. There are earthworms. This is not hewn stone. This is something freshly dug. Is the way I saw it, because they do mention all the earthworms kind of sticking out, and then like all of a sudden it's just gone. And it did mention that it had gone through a grave, like the floor had given out.
They like go in through the catacombs area,
in through the catacombs. So seeing that happen, I'm curious of the role of the saints and what. Because it also mentions that I don't think she was an aberration or something like that. Because Lyath specifically mentions the blood splatter. She followed the blood splatter from the wounds that the saint had.
Mm-hmm.
Which means she was a corporeal being and then just vanishes. So I'm curious if they manifest or if they're aberrations, because if they're aberrations, they shouldn't be leaving blood. But if they manifest, then the blood's okay. I don't know.
It's really interesting though, and that was why we talked a little bit about earlier the idea of the saints being somewhat real beings of power, and it's really not explored that much in this book, and we don't find a ton more about it. But it does come into play, and I think it's going to potentially be something more important later on, I'm guessing. And that's something too that I can only theorize because I have not finished the whole series. But yeah, that was interesting because the Lady of Battles, she seems to basically work through Elaine, like help him, but not specifically like do things on her own necessarily. And so she seems almost kind of even different than this other saint that we see that leads them away, but both are able to control some form of power. And so that's where the whole idea of the religion and the saints and what's real and what's not, because we know at least the saints, at least some of them, they have real power. They're actual beings. And they have in some cases, very strong magical ability to be able to do these things when they choose to. But as to why and how that plays in with the religion, like, and is it seen got to be, like, oh, it's a miracle that you saw this saint, or is it heresy that you said you saw this saint? It's hard to know. And so that was what I thought was really interesting, is because a lot of fantasy books, kind of like you mentioned, they do say like, oh, this is the religion, it's true, and it's fantasy world, so it is. And in this book, it's like, here's the religion, we're going to talk about it a lot, here's some people who think something different, and now we're going to elaborate and go other ways. And it's just, I found that really fascinating.
Well, like Stormlight Archive, you've got the popular held belief, and then like as it becomes out that it's not, this isn't how things happen, this isn't how the whole world finds out. It's not just, oh, that's heresy, go away, be quiet. But I don't know where I was going with that thought, but Stormlight Archive popped up as a
Brandon Sanderson does explore religion quite a lot in a lot of his books. So that's always something I found interesting. I think that depends. If anybody watching this is one of those people like, oh, I really like the exploration of religions, how they develop and offshoots and everything, you probably will enjoy that in this book. But it's interesting because it's a little dry, and at first it might just seem like it's kind of there, but it raises some really interesting questions for sure.
When we're introduced to Songlant, when we're introduced to him as a baby, we are specifically told that he has magical protection from damage. And then as he gets older, it's rumored he has some sort of protection. And then when the attack on Ghent happens, we literally see him take an arrow to the knee. And I don't understand, like, because I fully expected him to just be basically borderline invincible in battle.
That's essentially what's communicated, is that he and the specific wording is supposed to be he is supposed to be cannot be killed by anything male or female, something like that. So like should be any creature that's male or female shouldn't be able to kill him. So does beg the question, for example, could an Ika, are they male and female in the way that we understand it? Could they maybe kill him? Maybe not. But that is something that's brought up in book 2, so I don't really want to get into.
Okay.
But
also, the arrow to the knee, I know it came out before Skyrim.
Isn't it funny how it's hard to take things like that seriously, even though this was way before?
Yeah, Skyrim completely ruined that joke.
Yeah.
I mean, they flogged it. But no, I thought it was funny that. But I mean, he breaks off the arrow in his knee and then proceeds to run back into battle. So I don't know if he's just got a really high pain tolerance or what's going on there, but
yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay, so I want to ask you: did you get the title?
The King's Dragon?
Yeah.
Are you talking about Songlant being the King's Dragon?
Yeah. That never occurred to me until it was specifically mentioned in like book 3, and I'm like, oh, that's what that was about.
Yeah, there's no what I forget the name of the creature in here. Towards the end of the book, what was that called again? It was supposedly like feathered, covered in maggots. It's like rotting in flesh and everything.
Oh, it was like really sickly, but it was.
Oh, I know it killed one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, it did.
2 of my favorite characters died in this book.
The Guivray, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Guivray. Yeah, that sounds right.
I'm gonna put it in the chat. If anybody knows how to pronounce this word phonetically, let us know. But the Guivray, which I think is like a legit like legendary creature, but apparently they're real. And even there, like that was a creature that like it was on somebody's standard, and nobody really thought it was real though, because it was like a mythical creature there. Mythical creatures is another thing too. Is we're in a world where so much of the like magic and the fantasy, most regular people don't believe in it because it's just so uncommon. But we also see a mythical creature rear its head, so just kind of says, okay, so what other mythical creatures might exist? Yeah, so that's not any sort of spoiler, but just another interesting thinking point.
I can't hold it anymore. I have to talk about the D-bag.
Okay, let's talk about Hugh.
Hugh, do you mean?
Yes, Hugh, do you mean? My really bad pun from earlier. Definitely talking about Hugh. So Hugh is also a freighter, and he is the one who apparently. So it is a little bit complicated. So he is in the village that Lyath and her father are in. And he apparently wants the Book of Secrets. He's been trying to get that, but also has a thing for Lyath, which is made very clear. So after Lyath's father is killed in mysterious ways, involving magic of some sort, which we still don't find more about later. Andrew's got some predictions we'll talk about a little bit later. But so he's killed, and he had some really big debts. And so Hugh ends up buying Lyath. And she ends up, even though he's not supposed to, because he's the man of God, ends up making her his concubine while also trying to get the secrets. And I'll let you go from there. So
he does make her the concubine, but he breaks her in order to do it. Essentially, he doesn't force her into his bed, but apparently the winters are incredibly harsh. And so he makes her do chores around, I believe it's a church and not a house. It's a church with rooms for the freighter to stay in. And since he's bought her debt, basically she had the ability to pay off her debt based off of some books that her dad had that were not heresy. Hugh went out of his way to claim those for the church, since it was written word and the church has rightful claim on anything that is on a page. Basically, they can claim that. So she wasn't able to sell those to cover the rest of the debt. So she becomes an indentured slave, basically. And for no other reason than he wants to, and wants to get this book, he makes her sleep with the pigs. And as winter comes on, he forces her to stay in the cold no matter what. If she is doing a chore inside, there can be no fires around. Or as soon as she starts getting warm, she is sent back outside. She is essentially broken down day by day, night by night, until she wakes up basically covered in ice, can barely make it inside. And at that point, he uses the carrot and the stick simultaneously to break her down, and then starts sleeping with her on the regular basis. And it takes Leith's friend Hannah to kind of start noticing something's not right. And because Leith is like, hey, you can't be here. Hugh's going to hurt you. Hugh's going to do this. He full on gets in her head, even after she gets away from him, following a certain event that, hold on, I can't talk about it yet. Throughout the rest of the book, she feels like Hugh is watching her, like he is omnipotent in her life, that he knows where she is located, even though she has moved all the way across the country. She is in the king's service at this point, after being rescued by a supposed friend of her mother and father, which I'm not entirely sure it's true. But he knows who she is. He is called a King's Eagle and is part of basically their messenger. And he buys her debt in the service of the king, has witnesses to do it. And basically it's a here come the cavalry moment, which it's done very nice, but at the same time it is very nick of the moment. And even throughout all of this, she doesn't trust anybody after this except for Hannah. So it's a bit weird. So basically what ends up happening is she gets with child. Okay, I can talk about it now. She gets with child by Hugh, and then decides that she's come to... Okay, it says it's similar to a dragon. She doesn't want to do this anymore. She'd rather go back outside and sleep with the pigs. She is putting her foot down, and basically Hugh gets mad and beats her and beats her and beats her and beats her until she starts to miscarry, and then continues to beat her. And this is all described to us in extreme detail. And it is only through the intervention of Hannah and some other people, who basically Hannah goes and gets help, because she was there, I believe, just prior to the event. Like she was like just outside the church when this disagreement and argument happened. And that was one of two moments in this book that absolutely floored me. And you know what the other one is, and he deserved better, even if he was a simpleton.
Oh man, yeah, we haven't talked about that either. But yeah, that was a rough thing, and kind of Hugh's whole thing too is because the thing to mention is Hugh is like ridiculously good looking. It's something that's brought up. He's extremely beautiful, and even Hannah is at times, Hannah, Lyeth's best friend, is at times jealous of her because she's Hugh's slave who he sleeps with. Because she's like, oh, he's so beautiful, though. He's not like the other boys.
Oh, my God.
And it's just
he's
like...
a man of God. How bad can it be?
But that's kind of the thing. That's what it looked like. I mean, like, he does technically own you, and he's, like, beautiful. Like, what are you complaining about? And it's just that kind of attitude there with it as well. But it's Hugh the whole time is he's capable of this extreme rage, but then also most of the time he's just like so calm and soothing, and you just see like her mental state deteriorating, kind of like you mentioned, where she's got like PTSD, like full blown PTSD, and like just freaks out and like thinks he's gonna just pop up out of the bushes and come get her. And it's something I'll note is Kate Elliott was what's asked a question, and it's apparently not the darkest thing she's ever written. That's in another series. Interestingly enough, it's just as an aside, but it was pretty dark and came out of nowhere. I mean, he'd hit her before, but like to that scale, that was pretty brutal. And I will note, because you mentioned the kind of the here comes the cavalry trope, that too does it. Things still don't just go like super easy for Lyeth after that. She gets like rescued into another really tough life, a different tough life, but that's kind of like what I like too. It's not like she just was rescued and it's fine. It's like she's rescued, but it kind of at some points you question like, but at what cost? Like she's better off, and of course.
Now she's in the siege of Ghent immediately following.
It's like things don't just go all tickety boo for her afterwards. And so it really does. It's there are a lot in the first book kind of things that are like familiar or tropes, but that go a different way, and that was something I enjoyed, taking the familiar and turning it. But we did you mentioned Lackling. There was the other thing is,
man, I messaged you. I was like, "Oh, Lackling's awesome," and you're like,
he did. He was telling me how much he really liked the character of Lackling because he's just like the sweetest guy, wouldn't hurt a fly, and just like
the birds eating food out of his hand. He was so happy. He was like crying with like happiness.
And I didn't want to tell you, but yeah, he's later killed in a ritual sacrifice.
By a member of the church.
By a member of the church. And it's just he wasn't even, they weren't planning on doing him. They just basically like, nobody will miss him. We can do him since our chosen target's gone. Which we also haven't talked about the blood bond between Elaine and Sifsam.
Spoiler. So I didn't really want to bring it up. I almost started to bring it up and then realized I'm going to save that for spoilers. But basically what ended up happening is throughout the course, Elaine basically, because the monastery burned, ended up, he didn't have a church. He was promised to the church, but he didn't have a local church where he could go to. So basically he was seen as an able young man. And even though he's still technically promised to the church, he was taken to the Count
Lavestein,
his hold, to kind of serve for what was supposed to be a year, because the Ica had been raiding the outer lands of the Count's lands, and they needed all the help that they could get. So he went off with them, and during one of those raids, they captured an Ica prince who was kept in a cage with the dogs that we mentioned earlier. Now, the dogs attack anybody who is either not Count Levestein, which, I forgot about that scene. I might as well talk about it here if we're in spoilers anyway.
Yeah,
so the count is childless and wifeless, and we are told in the book that the count's dogs killed them, and essentially the count's wife would have never had protection, but they had a son together, and so we start to think that this blood bond with the dogs might just be bumpkiss, and that the dogs are crazy. They're feral. Basically, anybody who comes near the dogs gets bitten, attacked. We see these dogs maim and kill people on the regular. Basically, if you got too close, that was your fault. They've got a reputation. You should have known better. And all of a sudden, here comes Elaine, and they're good to him. And so he is put in charge of them in the kennel, and whispers start going around that he's either half Aoi. Did I get that right?
That's Sanglan. So
he's either half like demon blood, or he might be like the illegitimate child of the Count,
or might be the son of a well-known prostitute, or like there's like several different things kind of put out there.
But basically, we ended up finding out that the Count was in a loveless marriage. And what ended up happening is he was away on some mission and came back and found, he thought that his wife was having an affair. And then when he came back after being away a long time and she was pregnant and flaunted it in front of him, they decided to do this test where basically put him to the dogs. So the wife and the son ran and he released the hounds essentially. And basically that was his test to realize that the kid that he thought was his son wasn't his. And the wife cursed him to never procreate again. What the wife didn't know, or what we are led to believe, is that he had already produced an heir in Elaine, which is basically how the book ends, is he has been officially recognized as the heir to the Count.
There's still some questions with that too, and that's something I like too, because it's the kind of the tropey ending, but like before they bring that up, there's several other possibilities that are sort of brought up. So you're like is this true? But you have the hounds, and so you have the different pieces of evidence, but it's never exactly, you can't take things at face value necessarily because you get deeper things put into it. So yeah, definitely.
Well, the Count's story at the end seems to back it up, but we don't know if he's being honest.
Yeah.
I don't know. I found that very, very interesting. But anyway, he is put in charge of the dogs in the kennels, and this is where they keep the Ica prince. And Elaine kind of develops not quite a relationship, but almost an understanding with the Ica prince. He starts, for some reason, the Ica prince seems to think Elaine is a prince. He seems to think he is the son of the ruler, because he's been put in charge of him.
Well, and he says that his father, because his adopted father originally was Henry with an I, and the king's name is Henry with a Y. So he seems, oh, you're Henry, like the king's son.
So. And basically, he releases him when he hears Biscop Antonia threatening to kill him. He eavesdrops and hears this, and he's shocked to his core. He doesn't think it can happen. So he releases the prince to escape, and when that happens, the prince cuts him a little bit and then eats his blood, and it creates a sort of blood bond where throughout the book we start seeing when Elaine is sleeping, he is seeing events through the eyes of the Ica prince.
And I loved that because that was a really interesting way to not necessarily, it's a new POV, but it's happening through Elaine, and it gives us more of a view of the Ica and how they think and how they act, and more points there. So that's the device that's used in book 2 to show the Ica more, which I mean, for you, that's not a spoiler, but I think you can figure out that, that was what was going to happen. So it's a really interesting device that they use for that. But I found them to be really interesting. And the more I've learned about them, they are fairly unique, I think, because the way they're described, you just sort of think about they're just general, kind of ghoulies or whatever. But as you learn more about them and learn more about their culture and everything, it's very fascinating. So that's another thing to look forward to. It's lots more Ica, however you pronounce.
Yeah, and that's why the simpleton ended up being sacrificed, because they were going to sacrifice the blood prince, and instead they chose somebody who wasn't going to be missed. And this sacrifice kind of led to the brainwashing somehow. It's not really explained. Something about appeasing spirits, but basically Count Levestein, who had withheld support from the civil war that's brewing, he refuses to swear to either side. At which this is a nice sojourn into the second half of the book, which is segue, not sojourn. Anyway,
I knew what you meant.
But basically, all of a sudden, he's fanatically, to the point of attacking family members, and the heir apparent at that time to his lands He goes over to them and is like, "Hey, are you with me?" And they're like, "What are you talking about? I need you to decide." And it's like, "Well, let me think about it." No thinking, and immediately attacks. It's very deeply brainwashed too. Is it Duchess Sabella? Well, she's married to a duke, but her duke's kind of an idiot. He's a simpleton.
She's Henry's half sister from the first wife of Arnulf the Younger.
You're gonna confuse me like Patrick got confused on.
Oh my gosh!
On Farseer.
It's in that's the part that does get a little confusing. That's why there literally is the recent rulers. But
the family tree on this one is way more confusing than Farseer.
Okay, so you have Arnulf the Older, and then there's Arnulf. I don't know if you can see that, probably not. Arnulf the Younger had Sabella with his first wife, and had the current King Henry with his second. So that's the whole basis. She's eldest, and she's from the first more like royal wife, and so is it's actually similar to Regal and Farseer.
Yeah, I know. It's just the problem. My main problem with the family tree in this one is you've got two Arnulfs, you've got
multiple Henry,
and then they try and explain the dukedoms into it, and that's when my mind just leaves. I'm done paying attention.
Well, you have the one really noticeable one is Duke Conrad the Black. He's the only black guy. He's called Duke Conrad the Black.
I didn't even realize he was a man of color.
No, like I didn't either. I didn't realize that was literal until you meet him, and it's specifically noted because he's from like a different area, and there's just like we're in an area that's mostly white.
Oh, he's one of the Westmarch guys, isn't he?
He's down. I want to say south. I think he's south. So he'd probably be getting to. I mean, toward where, like, if we were looking at a real map, where we'd be getting almost into Africa. But he's also like I think it's his mother was from a far off country or something. So we know that there are like people of other races around. They're just really far away, and there's not a lot of travel.
Totally went over my head. I didn't catch it.
But, yeah, I
didn't catch it in Black Company either.
You're not the only one lost. Okay, it's okay. I was getting too deep into the family tree. That is a part that you are working with that in genealogy, so it does get a little confusing at points, and that's why there's the tree. But
don't even try.
When we're talking about it's not super important.
There is a section where the Frater Aegeus does give a lecture on how the family tree works in the book. If you are confused, I couldn't explain it to you.
Yeah, it's all in there. It's in there. It's just some of it's a little bit dense. But anyway, so Sabella she thinks she has first claim to the throne. She didn't get pregnant during her progress though, so that's why she wasn't deemed to be. We're back to the king queen progress, and so she did not get pregnant at the time, and so Henry did end up having Sanglant, and so by having Sanglant, proved himself fertile, and so he ended up inheriting. Sabella later married an also kind of simpleton type guy, and did have a daughter, Talia, and so she's now kind of trying to take over the kingdom.
But this is in fact not the first civil war that they've had. She was put down for an uprising before, and then was basically put in her place. She swore never to do it again in front of the church, and then the church representative, Bishop Antonia, apparently convinced her, 10, 12 years later, that no, you in fact do have a right to this throne, even though Henry's been sitting in the throne for nigh on 18 years. It's been a while that he's been king.
Yeah.
And she decides to re-inflame and go around the country brainwashing dukes. She even goes in and
He was a count. I was just giving you crap.
Count. The planting dukes.
What about satraps? I don't think there are any satraps. I was just throwing out.
No, my brain actually had to take the word in and then decipher it because it's not something I've ever actually heard.
There's a satrap in Live Ship.
Correct, but I've only ever read the word.
Oh, fair. I could be also pronouncing that wrong for the record.
I've never.
I don't think I've ever spoken it out loud.
Neither have I. That's why it took me a second. I was like, I know that. I know that word. Maybe.
Oh man.
But no, Constance. But what she does take Constance out of her city, and then demotes her, even though she doesn't have the authority to do it. Mm-hmm. It is a very. It's not a bloody civil war. Like, don't get me wrong. People die and there are battles. There's a battle. A battle.
There are more later. There's the one big battle.
Two battles.
There's
the Ghent battle, and then there's the Civil War battle.
Yeah.
But it all kind of comes together because she decides to strike at Henry. I don't know if it's by chance, but at the same time that the Ica decide to strike at Ghent. So basically, Henry was already getting ready to go assist Songlant at Ghent against this Ica invasion because they want to destroy bridges and basically throw down the city so that they have just unfettered access to this entire land. And as soon as he gets the news that Songlant needs help, he starts trying to raise levies to go out and help him. But at the same time, he then immediately gets news that the rumors he's been hearing of Sibella's... I'm surprised how well I remember this book. Anyway, the more I talk about it...
It's all coming back.
It's all coming back. I've read 3 honking big books since this. But an eagle arrives. Actually, Hannah and... No, is it Hannah? No, Hannah and her teacher inform them of...
Hathaway.
Yeah, Hathaway inform Henry of Ghent, and then another eagle shows up. And then promptly dies? About he die? No, he doesn't die.
Which specific one you're talking about.
He's a very minor character. But he rides in, basically gives the news, and passes out. That Sibella's uprising is not, in fact, a rumor, but it is, in fact, happening. And so then he has to go and deal that threat and leave Songlant to his fate. Which is kind of, the city falls after a magical trick. Even though they're warned it's a trick, nobody believes Leith because she sees through the magic illusion. And they're tricked into opening the gates because they think it's either a duke or a countess is coming to their aid. And like the entire party has been decimated. And what's left is trying to get into the city. And it's actually an illusion that the Ica have placed over some of their owns to get them to open the door. And so then they all flee through the Saints Tunnel that we mentioned earlier in the video, or in the live stream. And that's kind of where that story ends and where we're going to pick up in Prince of Dogs.
Yeah. And the thing I love too about the big battle between Henry and Sibella is there's like a total like 800 people fighting.
Yeah,
in
it's
this
not that
massive
big
battle, and it's so realistic though too.
Is it 800 per side though?
I think total, honestly.
Oh, total.
If I recall, I mentioned it in my original review, but it's just basically because she's been amassing and getting. I think
it was closer to 1,400.
It might have been more. Yeah, but I mean, still like pretty...
I think Henry outnumbered her by about 200 people, I think is what they ended up saying.
Yeah, that would make sense. I know it was a little bit outnumbered, but basically just small numbers because you see it so many times even when it's like medieval, like, oh, our army of 20,000 arrived to fight. And
Lord of the Rings is a perfect example. Our 10,000 Orokai
against 300 dudes.
Yeah.
but I mean, like, see, that at least was like they'd been specifically building an army, and like Rohan's like, oh crap, we're not prepared for this. So also a realistic look. But I really like that because he's like, I can't raise an army of even thousands on short notice. It's hard to just go and do that. And so that was another thing that I just really enjoyed. There's so much attention to detail in these books, and the realism, just as you see different people, how when you travel to different regions, there's small differences in how people talk and act and do things. And I was just something I really loved. Another bit of the world building.
So do you think the Lady of Battles intervened when Elaine grabbed Levestein off his horse?
I think that was just Elaine.
You think so? You think that was just blood calling blood type deal?
It's hard to know with him. That's one of those things. There's a couple of actions with him.
Super vague.
Yeah, and it's because she obviously acts through him, but it's interesting to think about. That's what I'm not 100% sure. It's not fresh enough in my mind for me to be like, it definitely was this.
Well, because he definitely mentions the rose, and how the rose changes color, from red to like a blood red type deal.
And the rose is significant.
Is it?
It is significant. Is all I will say.
And then there's that. There's so much to unpack with that battle because Elaine decides to snatch out the Count. He pulls his forces because he never supported either of them. At an opportune moment. Now, does that happen before or after Elaine helps Gaius kill the pseudo dragon?
The Guivre thing. So, yeah, that happens afterwards, and so it's basically it is described sort of dragon-like, but I think with like feathers, and it's sickly, but it's still like when you're a bunch of guys and there's this mythical creature shows up and starts, and apparently like it
had like a magical gaze, so that as long as it was looking at you, you were frozen.
Like, it terrifies people and they freeze through like the magic, and so the freighter Aegis, I don't remember what the correct pronunciation was, but he goes and he wanted to try to martyr himself and save them, and he succeeds in martyring himself, but not in killing the dragon thing. And so Elaine goes to help.
He gives Elaine
his opening.
His opening. I'm not gonna lie. When Gaius kicks Hannah off her horse, I didn't think he was going to die. I for sure thought that we were going to have him for many more books.
I really did. Yeah, that was a surprise. And that's kind of a lot of the things in the books. Even when you think you know what's going to happen, it doesn't always go that way. And that's why it is just interesting with some of that. And he definitely seemed like he was being built up to be a big character. And I do like that because it shows right off the bat where, characters can and will die. And you still have like, in any book, the main characters are unlikely to die unless your name's Martin. But it's in most books, it's unlikely to happen. And so at least knowing that characters can and absolutely will die, it's a good precedent to set. But it was also a really good ending. Just in general, it was pretty awesome.
So I do have I have a prediction that Hugh is going to come back with a vengeance. I don't think he's going to be able to inflict influence upon Leah.
I say Liath. Yeah.
Liath. I'll get it eventually. I'm switching it in my brain on the moment. Mainly because we meet his mother. His mother is a prominent person at court. He is a bastard son of a noblewoman.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when Liath was rescued, he was on his way to be installed at a higher position within the church. And then
abbot. Yeah, an abbot.
As an abbot. And then he's supposed to get elevated even further due to his connections. Right up to the point where he should be in proximity with the Scopos. I believe I said that right.
Mm-hmm.
The Scopos, which is our Pope. And he had intended to bring Liath along as his live-in lady.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised he didn't try and steal the book, even though he had it in his hands. That was weird because he does break Lyath and get the book, but then like she lunges forward and snatches it out of the cart, and then he just rides away, even though he knows like he doesn't have the book anymore.
I think that's just more so he kind of like he had to go, and because he was on a strict timeline of having to get somewhere, like based on the roads being travelable, and he'd already had to delay because he'd beaten her so badly she literally couldn't travel. And so I think that was part, and it's just like Wolf here could probably take him in a fight, so he's probably like, I don't know what I can do here. But
well, he could have claimed the book was his property. Like Wolf here couldn't have done anything to keep the book. He could take Lyath, but not the book. I don't know. That was an odd choice.
It's
go ahead.
The story's not over, is what I'll say. So, kind of your thoughts of where you see it continuing. I won't like straight up confirm anything, obviously, but there is definitely more to that story, and I would say Hugh is definitely not going to just like let go. So,
how did you feel about the insta love aspects?
With which character?
Between Lyath and Songland.
So, yeah, that honestly, and there's a bit more like of kind of romance later on, and reverse romance too. But
what is reverse romance?
I don't want to say, but basically,
is that like Bop It, but you hit the reverse? I don't
know. You know, they're people who like arranged political marriages and stuff. We see some of that happening where it's not so romantic. And then there's some other kind of romance things later on too. I'm not big on romance, and that did it was kind of that thing, like their instant connection. I'm wondering, I guess, if there's more to it, and even up to the point I'm at, it's unclear if there was more to like that connection. But that was, if I overthink it, I don't like it, but I just kind of like, all right, whatever. Everything else has been so realistic. I'll let you have that one, Kato.
The two things that I'm most looking forward to getting further explanation on are the Lost Ones and their buildings that are and are not at the same time. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because I'm still super confused.
The Lost Ones we will find more about as we come on, including the weird buildings, and you even in book one. And granted, the series is called Crown of Stars, and so there's going to be stars involved, and very much the stone circles that are mentioned as early on.
That up as well.
You will get a lot more explanation on kind of all of the mystical elements. So really quick for Patrick, romance detail, they're just minor stuff.
It's just minor.
In book one and in book two, it's not so bad. Book three, it got a little tedious at points, I will say. I know it's not awful, but you're gonna have the same problems I did with book three. It redeems itself. The ending was so good, but we get a little bit more in book three. With some other characters that I didn't care for too much either, but it does seem like it's going an interesting direction. But so it's not terrible, but it's yeah. The stone circles, the Lost Ones. That is definitely things that we will most certainly be expanding upon as we go further. So, what about your other? Since we're coming up on 2 hours and should probably wrap this up, your other predictions or things that you want to discuss that you have questions on.
Other predictions. I know I mentioned some earlier on, and we've talked so much I don't remember what I've mentioned and what I haven't.
Well, you in the pre-show before we were live, you mentioned your suspicions of Wolfgear and or Lyath's father's death.
Yeah. So very much Lyath believes that her mother died when she was very young. and then her dad basically sent them into hiding. My prediction is either A, because Wolfgear knows their parents, so either A, he is her father, and the man that she thought was her father is just a man who put her into hiding. Although I don't see that quite coming true, mainly because Wolf doesn't really care about the Book of Secrets, but he does use magic. But so also did Lyath's dad. But I don't think the mother is dead. I think it was either A, faked, or B, she was stolen from her mother to prevent something.
I just thought those were very interesting predictions.
And I think Lyath will grow even further, mainly because of the weird and wild interaction she has with magic. She can't control it, but she can perform it to a degree. Like, magic tends to either work really well around her, not at all, or just super inconsistently.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
I will not comment on anything you just said. I just wanted you to say it for the stream.
Okay. Fair enough.
Because you even mentioned these earlier. I have not thought of any way to even like engage in that discussion without having to spoil something. So because you're predicting the future. So I think the ways that you're thinking about it.
You just told me I'm predicting the future.
No, well, you're trying to. I didn't mean that you succeeded.
Okay, fine.
That's a figure of speech, Andrew.
Okay, fine. I'll accept that.
But I just mean, yeah, your predictions, the kind of you've got a couple of different pathways. I think that you're doing, I think, exactly what Kate Elliott intended you to do. She's written it in ways to make you question, and you will get answers. You will get hard answers later on things that happened. But yeah, that's why when you were immediately doing that, I'm like, yeah, because in book 2, it really she does in book 2, and I this isn't a spoiler, but she will go in and things that you just thought you knew as a fact in book 1, she'll be like, is it a fact though? Is it? And,
oh no.
Oh, it's just like she kind of goes in and just like makes you question everything. And sometimes she's just messing with you, I think. I guess
really?
like she'll be like, is it?
A little bit of tongue in cheek.
Yeah, because there'll be times where like maybe something really is, but the way she writes it, you're like, wait, is this not what I thought? And so there's a lot more to come for sure. But yeah, I love the way you're thinking and theorizing at this point. So
it is a very good opening book. I did give it a 4 out of 5. There were just some things like the King's Progress. I can't. I'll harp on the King's Progress all night long.
It's gonna be mentioned a lot more.
Go forth and bang, and this is how you become king. I don't understand. My brain won't connect those dots.
There's a whole plot line later on where they're trying to figure out who's going to be Henry's heir, and so there's lots more mentions of King's Progress.
Is there a lot of banging going on? Because
it's not so much on screen.
I sent you on your progress as a little girl. I hope you came back a woman.
Oh, when you say it like that's basically what it is.
That's how it feels.
Saying it out loud, I don't.
Yeah, I'm aware. I didn't like it either.
Oh, like this is the
literally. It's go forth and bang.
I mean,
and then the live screen drops off and dies.
So, and if you're not very good at it, we leave you with go forth and bang. Only if you want to inherit.
We can't do that.
Only if you want to inherit the throne. No.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, that is probably my biggest pet peeve. Is I don't understand the King's Progress. Just from a logical standpoint. I found as I read more in-depth worlds, I've had complaints about even live ship traders not following what I consider to be logical. And the King's Progress just doesn't make sense to me. Mainly because if you produce an heir, and the heir is a bastard, that bastard got you your throne, but that bastard can't inherit the throne.
It is kind of a weird thing, and I think some of it is. It is. I feel like the reason it's so hard to look past in this book is because there's such a realism to it.
Yeah.
There are so many parts that read almost like you could almost believe you're reading historical fiction if it weren't for like the magic and stuff. And so because of everything like being so well done, like that, I feel like does stick out as just kind of a glaring a thing to happen. So
yeah,
I get it. I do get it.
It's a good series. If you've stuck this far and you've already read it, good on you. If we spoiled the entire book for you, read it anyway.
I mean, hopefully us talking about it and being very excited and animated has made you want to read it. Looking at you, Patrick and James, if you're still here. But yeah, Patrick
is like maps.
Yeah, do you want to go? I'll put the map back on, Patrick, if you come back. Magic is real.
He's still here.
So there you go. If you think magic is real, then this is a literal history. It happened. That's the only thing keeping it from being so.
There's so much, and literally, it's not a thick book, and all of that happened here. Yes.
Yeah.
You know what? If we got one person to buy the book, live stream
2 hours.
2 hours well spent.
Yes.
This is for you, Patrick.
Yes, I'm so happy. That's why I legitimately just want people to read this book. I was so happy when Andrew got it and read it so that I could talk about it because it's just nobody else has read this. And I really enjoy, obviously, talking about this particular book. So.
I think Himvar wants to read Prince of Dogs with me next month.
I think he did read it and really liked it too. He actually, one of his favorite characters was Rosvita, which I know you didn't care for that much. But
well, it wasn't that I didn't like Rosvita. I forgot who she was. The problem is she's not a main POV, and so she doesn't even get full chapters. She gets
you
like
get a bit
paragraph
more
sections.
Yeah.
So I was fine with her once I went back, because basically you meet Rosvita, she's given a task, she disappears for like 90 pages, and then you get Rosvita again for like half a chapter. And so I had to go back and remind myself who Rosvita was and what she was doing, because it doesn't give you a quick recap. She's just doing it.
Yeah. And she gets a little bit more screen time in each consecutive book. So I think she'll grow on you even more too as you get to know her too, because I liked her as a character as well.
Will Rosvita's little brother come back?
You mean the guy who disappeared in the stone circle?
No, that wasn't her little brother.
I was going to say
little brother was the son who got sent to the monastery at the beginning of the book.
Oh, you will absolutely see him again. Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm okay with that.
Yes.
That's all I wanted to know.
I couldn't remember who her little brother was for a minute, and I'm like that because that wasn't the guy who disappeared.
They've never met.
Yeah.
I don't believe.
Not really, anyway.
She's like 18 years older than he is. 12 or something years. Like, she hasn't seen him since he was like a baby, I think.
And his name is escaping me right now.
I think it begins with an L.
I was thinking an I. It's not super important, but he's you will Ivar. It's Ivar.
Ivar.
Yeah, I had to think for a minute because it's been a bit since I read book 3, and there's a lot going on. But yeah, so Ivar, absolutely, you will see Ivar again. I won't tell you with what circumstances, but I mean, I suppose you already know he's in a monastery, but you will see him again, for sure. So, yeah.
Well, we're approaching 2 hours. Do we want to wrap it up?
Any final thoughts or any those we still have any questions on Crown of Stars, King's Dragon, the first book? Or
I will say I will probably pick this up after Legend, book 2.
Book 2.
Yeah. I think I'm going to open up the month with Legend just to kind of give me a shock to the system, because live ship is whew.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend going directly into it because you've done so much dense stuff lately. So
it's only getting worse.
Yeah, so you got to have a breather book.
I want to do. I think Night Watch is
Guards.
Guards Book 2, the Night Watch.
Oh,
Is that Night Watch?
That's in there. I don't remember which is the actual second one.
Or is
I'm
it
doing
Man at Arms?
publication order. I think it might be Man at Arms.
Men at Arms.
So, but
I don't know.
those are good too.
I meant
to throw in more.
I need to throw in. Well, I'm hoping to. Are we doing a read along? We might be doing a buddy read, but it won't be an official channel read along.
Yeah, I've already read it. Andrew and somebody else in the Discord are reading it at some point in April, I think. So if you read book 1 and get through it, you could jump in, or you can always catch up later, because I'm hoping to get them to keep reading. So
what I'm gonna recommend to Patrick is don't read Assassin's Quest and King's Dragon at the same time.
That's a good recommendation. For sure.
They're so dense and so similar in tone. I don't want to send you to therapy. I don't want to be responsible for that. I wouldn't classify this as a dark fantasy, but it has some very dark themes. There is a lot of melancholy. Assassin's Apprentice isn't that bad, but it ends on a pretty dark note.
It gets worse with Farseer.
Yeah, Farseer just gets worse.
Holy crap!
You get punished, but you love it, and so you keep coming back. No, I would say limit your dense fantasy to one at a time. Because I mean, this month I did Assassin's Quest, which was the third book in Farseer. I've done King's Dragon. I'm now in Live Ship Traders. I've done more than, and I mean, even next month I'm reading Prince of Dogs, Mad Ship, and Memories of Ice. I am just in the long haul, dense books for a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I almost burned myself out this month. I came very close. How you liking it?
I do really like it, actually. I mention it if I don't button my computer in my wrap up, which is next week. I talk about it a little. So
mine should be coming out the 31st. So
you're earlier than me. So
I literally wanted my first wrap up to at least be on time.
Makes sense. All right. Well, speaking of wrapping up,
I see what you did there.
Speaking of wrapping up, we have been going for 2 hours, so we have talked a lot, and I feel like we've probably still missed things. But
oh god, I know we have.
This was really enjoyable. I think just kind of really doing a deep dive into the book. So I've been looking forward to doing this since you told me you were going to read the book. So definitely fun. So once again, if you're still here, we've talked all about King's Dragon by Kate Elliott. It is the first book of 7 in Crown of Stars. Mine, you can see, are over here.
Mine are upstairs. Sorry.
The covers do get worse for the most part, FYI, but the books are really good. And definitely read Crown of Stars.
We should be doing another, even though we probably won't have a lot of viewers, we will probably do this again for every subsequent book.
Yeah, so catch up now and watch now so that you can join and know what the heck we're talking about if you don't. And thank you for those of you who did show up live, even though I know
you're all awesome, even if you haven't read it.
Them have not read it, but I'm glad that you guys did show up and join. And if you're seeing this afterward too, once again, these are pretty dense. They're not horribly long though. Book 2 is shorter. Book 3 is a little bit longer.
I know book 7 is pretty short as well.
Book 4 is real long. It's the longest,
I think. Yeah,
but
I think after book 4 they start getting shorter again.
Yeah, so it's definitely something. But yeah, if you want to catch up and chat with them, so I've done the first 3, and I'm trying to let them catch up. I can't guarantee I'll wait, but I'm trying.
I'm doing one a month. That's all I can give you.
Oh, I know. I got enough stuff to read anyway. It'll probably be fine for me.
You know, it's probably as soon as I'm done with this, we'll probably end up doing Wheel of Time.
Yeah, there's a real good chance of that.
It'll be time by then. I'm 2 years past due for a reread.
I'm always craving another one. So yeah, I like the sound of that. So hopefully you enjoy the live stream. Definitely want to do more of these in the future because they're a lot of
Absolutely.
fun. We do love getting some comments, but they're fun too. Check out, we will at some point be doing some on Andrew's channel as well, as I read Faithful and the Fallen and finish up that series. So I'm
I would
excited for
love
that
to
too.
do that.
Yeah, we thought you agreed to it. So
Yeah, I forgot. I'm not gonna lie to you.
I was gonna say you seem happy, but I'm glad. But yeah, so I still have to read
but
the
I'm
last
down
two
to clown.
books. So
I
because
am down
that was
to
the
clown.
series he was making me read that I also really enjoyed. So yeah, so watch out for some more live content. Let us know if you do like the content. Patrick also needs to read Wheel of Time, so we're gonna make you read it with us when we do that. And we had fun too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Get along like a house on fire.
All right. Well, I think that's about it. Andrew, thanks so much for joining me for this. And
Not a problem.
thanks everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
Peace out.